Rebel Force Radio.
Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here. Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here.
A small rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, get ready. It is all Maul this week here on Rebel Force Radio. Highlights going back throughout the history of RFR and our coverage of this character. You'll be hearing from the creatives, the actors, and this is exclusive content that only Rebel Force Radio can give you. Yeah, it's our version of Maul Madness. Not March Madness, it's Maul Madness. As we all anticipate Maul Shadow Lord coming to Disney Plus, debuting April 6th. This is part of the primer. Getting ready for that. So thank you all for hanging out with us this week on RFR. It's always great to hang out together and talk the wars. And this week we have a very specific focus. And as I said, we'll be looking back through the archives of Rebel Force Radio highlights to bring you this look at Darth Maul. And by we, when I say Rebel Force Radio, I mean me. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yes, that's right. Maul Shadow Lord is right on the horizon. So we're getting primed for Maul with a dive into the RFR archives to hear from creatives and actors and other great Maul moments from our history here at Rebel Force Radio. And the first collection of audio we got for you are highlights from RFR interviews with Dave Filoni. Back when Dave was the supervising director of Star Wars The Clone Wars, Dave would give us regular season updates here on Rebel Force Radio exclusively. So we're going to hear clips of Dave discussing the impact of the Darth Maul resurrection on the Star Wars saga and how Maul was able to survive and return with spider legs. So there's some valuable information in these in this collection of interview highlights with Filoni. Plus, Dave talks a little bit about Darth Maul's rise as a gang lord on Mandalore and so much more. And then after that collection of interview highlights, you're going to hear this great archive interview with Sam Witwer, the voice of Darth Maul. And it's from when Darth Maul returned with those spider legs in Star Wars The Clone Wars from back in the day. So we're going to hear some guys who are instrumental in the story of Darth Maul in telling it via Star Wars animation with shows like The Clone Wars and the upcoming Maul Shadow Lord. So, Jason, do we have everything ready to go? Can we dive right in?
We sure do. And I think as we look back on some of these moments, we will find that a Darth Maul series exclusively focusing on Darth Maul was probably inevitable. There's a lot of love for this character and fascination of this character between guys like Filoni and Sam Witwer.
Rebel Force Radio.
How will the return of Darth Maul affect Count Dooku and his relationship with Darth Sidious?
Well, I mean, it's a fair enough question. We don't answer that directly in season 5. We kind of imply a little bit of it. We answer a portion of that. It's all, the motion of the future. But, that gets brought up. I don't want to give away too much, but, there are only 2 ever. And there always seems to be, you can have 2, and you can have 2 with a pending. But you can't really have outright 3, and 4 is way off.
Uh-huh. And that's what we have, isn't it? I mean, we have Sidious, we have Sidious, Dooku, Maul, Oppress, and Savage.
And Ventress.
Yeah, we're in big trouble.
Ventress.
Ventress is out.
Is she?
Ventress
Has she abandoned
yeah.
the dark side? She's abandoned the dark side, is what you're saying.
Well, she's definitely not going to be a Sith.
Yeah,
I mean, you can be involved in the dark side, but you're not necessarily a Sith. I think that's a Sith is an order of something. You know, you're trained in that way of thinking. But just because you're part of the dark side doesn't mean you're necessarily a Sith. I mean, if you're kind of a feral person using the Force, untrained and undisciplined, you might not ever heard of the Jedi or the Sith. You don't know what you are. You know, but you might use it to regressive tendencies and be tapping into the dark side. So being a Jedi or a Sith, you have had a certain amount of training and knowledge passed on to you through an order. And so she is kind of on the outs because the Sith don't recognize her anymore. In fact, they tried to kill her. And she never really achieved what she thought she wanted. And Mother Talzin, as you saw her in the massacre episode, was basically telling her, you're going to abandon all that and become a true Night Sister. So if she's anything at this point, she thought she was going to become a Night Sister again, but then they got eliminated, at least her clan did. So she, you know, was wandering off, and now she's basically a bounty hunter trying to figure out what her future is. And then Savage is a very poorly trained dark side wielder. He's all aggression and power. He's kind of like the Hulk.
Yes.
But he doesn't have a lot of discipline. He doesn't have a lot of know-how. Maul is a super dangerous threat because he's been trained for years. He's really adept, but he's broken. So he's kind of in the Vader realm. And, you know, he's a bit severed from what he knew, which was having a master. But he's well trained by Sidious in all types of Sith ways, not the least of which is manipulation. So, again, I don't want to give too much away, but, you know, you're going to see a lot more of this in Season 5 with Maul and, you know, and other bad guys. So
Well,
it's good, though. You're thinking along the right lines, as always, you know, because once you bring someone like that back in, it's like putting another dog in the yard. And you're like, wow, what are the other dogs going to think about this? So...
Exactly. And, you know, we mentioned Maul has been severed from the dark side, but he is also severed from the lower half of his body.
Right. Yeah, bummer.
And we talked to Sam a little bit about this, but I just wanted to get your take on how did Darth Maul get those spider legs anyway?
Well, the way that works basically is that when he is severed and falling, a Sith holds on to life. They have to. Their power is completely tied to their physical being and their life. They don't believe in the selfless act. They don't believe in, you know, anything beyond death. They don't maintain themselves beyond death. As far as Jedi know in our era, you cannot maintain your individuality after death. The Sith aren't interested if that's the case. All their power is based on them being alive and breathing. So self-defensively, instinctively, you know, they'll do whatever it takes to maintain their existence. So he goes into kind of this state, almost a state of shock, a state of meditation, and, you know, he's still alive, though in a pitiable state. His spirit's intact. And the dark side of the Force and his rage and his anger and his hate well up around him and are able to maintain his life, though it's kind of in a pitiable psychotic state. When he winds up on the junk planet, you know, basically the spider legs are formed out of his subconsciousness. He doesn't craft them. No one makes them for him. They just, you know, kind of build themselves onto his body in his fragmented mental image of what he's supposed to be. And his fragmented mental image is that of a horrific shape, of a spider or some other kind of foreign creature. And it's only his dark will and the dark side of the Force that holds that all together. But his mental state is like that of a nightmare for the past, you know, what I think it's 10 years or so that he's in that state of existence. He's not really Darth Maul. You can't, as you saw, you can't really talk to him. He's incoherent. He's a rabid animal, as he describes. And he's only awakened from that nightmare when Mother Talzin cleanses his mind, which you see her doing as much as his body, and then brings him back. So
it's all fear is what it is. And it also reveals to us the fact that Darth Maul is afraid of spiders.
Right. Well, it's a horrible shape. Maybe he is. I don't know.
Hey, this is Dave Filoni, supervising director of Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts. In fact, the only podcast I listen to.
And as far as the Darth Maul episodes, you guys brought in Peter Mayhew to talk to the animators and everyone about the character of Chewbacca and sort of discuss how he moves and reacts and everything. Did you guys bring in Ray Park for the animators like you did with Peter to learn more about the character of Darth Maul?
Well, I mean, I've met Ray and I've talked to Ray. In fact, I told Ray about this whole Maul thing happening quite a while ago, and I got to give him a lot of credit because he certainly never spilled the beans on it. So, I mean, he's great. I've been really fortunate to meet him several times, but our schedules didn't really line up in this situation because he's been very busy on the new G.I. Joe project. So it's been really hard for everybody to get the synchronicity of the timing of it. And so it didn't really interface. Luckily, we have a ton of reference material from the films and footage that he filmed and behind the scenes, and we had all of that, to draw from for what we were doing with Maul. And some things that Maul's doing are I don't want to say they're different, but they have to be different by nature of, the whole leg issue than perhaps some of the things that where Ray was fighting. So it's going to be definitely one of the hardest things we've had to do on the show is resurrect Darth Maul. It's we kind of took baby steps into this where we brought Boba Fett into the show, and we were very careful about how we did that. Then we brought Chewbacca into the show. We were very careful about how we did that. So we were able to practice kind of getting these type of characters that people know right. And to me, the exciting thing about bringing Darth Maul into the show at the end of the day is that now you don't know what happens to him. You don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, is he alive? Is he not alive? How is he alive? And what ultimately happens to this guy? He is a classic character that once he's back, returned from the dead or whatever is going on with him, you don't know what happens to him. And we've never had that situation before because Chewbacca at a certain point turns up in A New Hope and you know more of his story, but you don't know going forward what's going to happen to this rather iconic character. So that's an interesting twist, and it's only something that George could make happen. He's sitting in the writer's room saying, we're going to do this, and all of us saying, that's going to be a challenge because you cut him in half. That's the biggest thing for me is I can specifically remember being in the theater during Phantom Menace and watching Darth Maul fall down that tube and watching him split apart. And I literally thought, ha, ha, ha. That's so no one can bring him back to life. Because Boba Fett's come out of that Sarlacc pit 100 different times, 100 different ways. And I bet you George never intended that to happen. Because I used to think I remembered hearing interviews when I was younger, and George said, no, he's dead, but the fans keep bringing him back. And then remember the special edition, like the Sarlacc pit would come out and actually grab Boba Fett and gulp him down. It was like George was in a tug of war saying, no, he died. No, he's alive. No, he died. So finally, I think George, he's fine. He's alive. You can't stop the will of the people on that. But seriously, I thought with Maul, it's definitive. He got cut in half.
Oh, yeah.
He's dead. Right? And then here I am, all these years later, and I'm the guy, right?
You're the guy that's resurrecting him.
That's got to do this. And I'm like, oh, how do you draw these things?
To wrap my head around the concept of a Mandalorian Darth Maul, it's really incredible to see how that character has grown since we saw him get cut in half and fall down the shaft. Yeah, easy for you to say. Cut in half and down the shaft. So then he returns, and he's this slobbering, maniacal, half man, half mechanical spider creature. And then he's slowly brought back to someone that I find to be more calculating, more intelligent. He seemed more of just, as a matter of fact, he was always described in Phantom Menace as being just sort of a living, breathing weapon, almost as if he was devoid of thought, of opinion, of knowledge, of any sort of intelligence. And now we're seeing him much more calculating, much more sinister.
Yeah, I mean, I think the root of all that, though, is that if he is a good apprentice to Sidious, Sidious would train him in his likeness, really, and teach him what he knows. The Sith, by their nature, can't be so overt. He is a deadly weapon because George needed him to be that in Phantom Menace, but he didn't have the time to get more into who he is. If you listen the few times he speaks, he is very subservient, and he doesn't come across as someone that's very dim. Mm-hmm. He comes across really rather sharp, which makes your villain, I think, that much more effective. So in the end, we really wanted to have his revenge kind of take him over in the first outing last season. And once he kind of was satisfied with trying to have that attempt at quick revenge at Obi-Wan, he calms down and kind of steps better into his body and says, this is gonna, I need to settle myself down and think about this. I need to utilize this brother I have. I need to really do what my master had taught me, which is work within the shadows and build power slowly, and then opportunities will present itself that he can take advantage of. Because especially without Sidious kind of cloaking him and protecting him at large, he would be pretty vulnerable to the Jedi Knights at this point, especially since they're aware of him. But since they're distracted with the Clone War, he's able to capitalize on this and kind of work in areas that they've long neglected. And it really leads back into the Clone Wars, the movie where the Jedi struck a deal with the Hutts that they would kind of turn a blind eye to their black market operations if they were allowed to use their hyperspace lanes, which they were unaware of. And so all that kind of comes back to haunt them in a way, and Maul might not be aware of that particular detail, but he knows that the crime world is a place that he can flourish. Obi-Wan's wary of this in the season opener. So Sam and I were pretty excited to really give Maul, I don't want to say a bit more dimension, but to show his thought process, to show that he was a good apprentice to Sidious, a cunning apprentice, because in the end it really makes him a lot more dangerous, because we already know he can fight, but we're not clear if he can fight as well as he used to, given that he's, half cybernetic now. So like anyone recovering, you kind of lean on your other skills, and in this case he has become a bit more of an architect. Hey, this is Dave Filoni of Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you are listening to Rebel Force Radio with Jason and Jimmy.
I sense a great disturbance in the Force.
Always remember I am fear. Always remember I am hunter. Always remember I am filth. Always remember I am nothing. I've just one final taste. Destroy your ties to the Jedi, and at last you will be a Sith Lord. Will destroy the Sith and the Jedi.
Vader can't stop me now. Nothing can. Nothing can. Nothing can.
Yes, joining us on the line right now, the one, the only, Mr. Sam Witwer.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
It's an absolute pleasure. And listening to that introduction, it's a great reminder to fans that are listening of just how prolific you are and have been in the Star Wars universe. But I guess when they need a really evil character, Dave Filoni and company, they just call up Sam Witwer. So what is it, Sam, about you that enables you to play such great bad guys?
Well, I think it's just because I'm a murderer. I think the murder thing is. I think that helps. No, I don't know. I mean, aside from Starkiller, it's been baddies.
Well, it depends on how you play the game, because Starkiller can be a pretty bad guy too.
This is true. Yeah. But Dave Filoni, I mean, one job led into the next. The Force Unleashed led to him hiring me and Adrian Wilkinson for the Mortis trilogy, and then that led to Darth Maul. So and who knows where that's going to go next, aside from more Darth Maul, of course.
Awesome. And Sam, how does that make you feel? Because you grew up as a kid in fabulous Glenview, Illinois, as a Star Wars fan. And the reason I make reference to Sam growing up in Glenview, Illinois, is because that's pretty much the same area I grew up in. I grew up in the neighborhood town Northbrook. And I want to ask you a little bit more about what it was like growing up a Star Wars fan in Glenview later on. But I just want to know, how does it feel being such a Star Wars fan and having Jason now refer to you as a prolific Star Wars actor?
Well, I gotta say, it's really, it's as fun as you would think. It really is. It's one of those things where if you could go back in time and tell yourself at 10 years old that you would have the opportunity to contribute to that mythology, your 10-year-old self would flip you off and kick you in the balls or something. It would have been honestly, I wouldn't have believed myself. But yeah, it's really a good time, and it's also an opportunity to try out ideas that I've had for a long time. Such things that I talked with friends about when I was a teenager, and now I get to kind of slip them into these Star Wars projects. So I'm really lucky. I'm really having a good time.
And the idea of Darth Maul being found at the bottom of a garbage pit, completely insane. Did that come from the script or from Filoni or from your ad-libbing, or is it a combination of the three?
Oh, well, as far as the overall shape of the story, that has to be, they have to know exactly what they're doing before we get into the recording room. It's not like we all just get together and and we're all sitting there, and I arrived there and I'm like, hey, I was thinking, what if he was like a spider? And they're like, yeah, he's a spider.
Oh, you've ruined it. See, that's how I think that it happens.
Yeah. The reason I bring up the question about your ad-libs and your contributions to the story in particular is because it seems like your talent as portraying Maul as insane was something that was probably exploited a little bit in the voiceover booth, because we saw those great behind-the-scenes videos on StarWars.com.
And definitely, again, they have some, the way they do it is they have like layout. They've already, quote unquote, sort of shot the scene with, sort of very primitive versions of the characters, maybe with temp dialogue, and they have a general idea of what they want. But then they go into the recording booth and they get the actual performances, and then those ideas get fleshed out in a big way in terms of what the specifics are and what the specific performances are and all that stuff. And sometimes the layout will change based on what happens with the performance. In the case of Darth Maul, I think there was a lot more, because you talk about the ad-libs, and where those came in was that the script said that he was muttering to himself, and but it didn't specify what he was saying. Sometimes the script would have a word over and over and over again, so I would just kind of expand off whatever the idea of that word was, and I just ad-libbed a bunch of stuff. It was a little bit like, because I thought this was kind of a Heart of Darkness reference, that this guy has to go find, like Apocalypse Now, he has to find Colonel Kurtz, and so very much like that, I was in the vocal booth ad-libbing a lot of twisted stuff, and they used quite a bit of it. I was very happy about that, including bits of the Sith code, or also even perverted bits of the Sith code that weren't quite right, and because I thought, here's an opportunity to give the audience hints about what this guy's last 13 years were like. What is, what are the ideas and the thoughts and the mantras that he's used to try to keep himself alive and to keep himself together, unsuccessfully.
One of those thoughts is a line that Darth Maul said that particularly caught my attention. I'm going to play the piece of audio for you. Here it is.
The chains are the easy part. It's what goes on in here that's hard.
Wow, listen to that. And so that line is a line that you performed as the Son in his guise as a prison creature in the episode Altar of Mortis. Here's that sound.
The chains are the easy part. It's what goes on in here that's hard.
So my crazy speculation led me to believe that there's a possibility that we're not actually seeing Darth Maul, but we're seeing the Son disguised as Darth Maul. Now, I know that's really off the deep end, but maybe you can just kind of tell me what your motivation was for picking that particular piece of dialogue and applying it to the character of Darth Maul.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I could tell you exactly what I think it means, but then I'm robbing you of the fun of your imagination. I mean, you tell me what you think it means. I have very specific. Everything that I did had very specific reasons, and if you listen very carefully to what Darth Maul is saying, even in the background while Clancy's talking, or there are it's not gibberish. There are very specific things that he's saying, and in some cases he's talking to specific people, and if you can make it out, you get little clues as to what's going on with him. But I don't know that I want to explain it. I think it's more fun if, I mean, yeah. Look, I think the son. Okay, Dave likes to not go into the specifics of what all the Mortis stuff means, right? And I think he's right to do that. But I don't think there's any secret in saying that the son was made to represent all of the villains of the Star Wars universe. I mean, he was. There are little in my performance as the son. I tried to give little hints of Palpatine and hints of Darth Vader and hints of Darth Maul and Dooku and all those guys, and but to do it very subtly, not to hit you over the head with it. And or I mean, sometimes I did hit you over the head with it, but other times we're a little bit more subtle. So in terms of the connection between those two characters, it's up to you guys. I know what I think it is, and I know what I think the connection is, or how that all works. But it's more interesting for you guys to figure it out. It's the same thing with, for example, everyone who wants to know, hey, but how did he survive, and what's the story of the past 13 years? And I think Star Wars fans, we have with the expanded universe, everyone is used to having every little piece of Star Wars history explained. If there's a guy in the corner drinking a whiskey, Star Wars has a whole story for what is he doing in the Mos Eisley Cantina, and that's cool. And I definitely read a lot of that stuff when I was younger. But on the other hand, what's really cool is figuring it out yourself. I mean, when we watched those original 3 movies and that's all we had, our imagination filled in a lot of gaps. And I would love to bring that back to Star Wars. I mean, what was Darth Maul doing for the past 13 years? How did he survive? Well, I happen to know the answers to those questions, but I actually think it's more fun if people kind of come up with it. I've heard people come up with theories that I'm like, yeah, I think that's you're on the right track there. I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, in terms of the direct survival, we've seen characters force users fall into bottomless pits before, and what happens sometimes? Well, don't they get sucked into waste removal tubes? I don't know. I mean, haven't we seen that? It's just something to kind of get you going. I mean, it's when I got the script, I didn't have those questions. I read it and I was like, oh, this is all totally clear to me. But I guess it's not, maybe it's not clear to everyone. I don't know. But for me, I was like, oh yeah, then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and I asked Dave about some of those things, and he's like, yeah, that's the idea. One of the interesting things that I will demystify, though, because frankly, okay, people can come up with whatever they want, but I think this is cooler if they know actually what it is. That isn't a droid that he's on top of, that whole spider thing. That's not a droid. I think it's more cool if you really watch, for example, the HD broadcast and take a good close look at those legs. It's very clear what's happening there, or what's been happening over the past 13 years, how that's evolved.
What you were alluding to is in your live chat you did with Entertainment Weekly, and I think you also made reference to this in your Star Wars Insider interview, is that spider legs weren't actually surgically attached to him.
No, not at all.
A manifestation of the dark side energies coming together and forming the lower half of his body in such a hideous way that it looked like a spider.
Well, it's funny, Dave, now that I think about it, there's no reason to be cagey about this because Dave actually answered this at the Q&A for the screening. If you look closely at those legs, you can see pieces of the legs swimming around the surface of the legs, and you can also see pieces that are floating off of the legs. So it's if you look closely, there's there's no ambiguity there. This is a manifestation of the dark side of the Force. This isn't a droid thing. Some of the pieces are obviously of droids, the pieces of garbage, but the idea that he'd been crawling around in the garbage, and as he started losing his sanity, the dark side starts stretching out and kind of trying to protect himself, and then suddenly pieces of garbage started sticking to him. And then they, over the years, kind of grew into these spider legs so that he could get around, which I think is of course they grew with his madness. It's a complete physical manifestation of his mental state, and I just think that's awesome. And again, it's one of those things where when I read the script, that was immediately my take. I'm like, oh, well, actually, you know what? I shouldn't take all the credit for that, because Dave explained it to me when he offered me the job. He said, yeah, he's through the dark side of the Force. These spider legs have grown out of him, made of garbage. And I just love that. I think it's amazing.
Hey, Stewie, you ready to go home?
About an hour ago. This party sucks.
What happened to your face?
I'm a kitty cat. Stupid face painters apparently never heard of Darth Maul.
The galaxy is listening.
Sam, when we think of Darth Maul, we think of him as we last saw him in episode 1, and he's obviously played by Ray Park. He's big. He's bad. When you actually go into the studio to record, you don't have the liberty or the luxury of seeing the episode. How privy were you to what Maul was going to look like that would have clued you in to just how vulnerable he was and how that informed your performance?
Well, that was the thing, is they brought the artwork. Dave, when he called me up to offer me the role, we talked about it, because he wanted me to start thinking about it in the weeks, leading up to the record, and which, by the way, I got to thank him for that. I mean, one of the things I love about Dave Filoni is he understands actors well enough to know that the more information you give us, the better. And for example, when we were recording the stuff, he set me up with a lot of scripts ahead of time, stuff that was way in the future in terms of where this character was going. So I had the liberty and the opportunity to create an arc, to have it start in a very specific place so that it could continue to evolve for many episodes down into the future. And me and him had talks on the phone of like, okay, as I understand it, the story starts here, and then it goes here, and it goes here, and we keep revealing new character traits and new motivations. And so, it's very wise of him to understand my job well enough to know that he has to get me those scripts,
Yeah, right.
Which is great. If he wants it to be really good, then he's got to give me the opportunity to do that and build a very definitive arc, and deliberate arc. But what was your question? What am I talking about? Where are we? Who am I?
I was just talking about how much the way that Maul looks,
sure,
the concept, right, and how it informed your performance. Because we see him, he's not just got spider legs, he's emaciated, he's awfully thin, his horns have all grown out, and he's unkempt. I guess that's like the Zabrak equivalent of having a bad hair day or whatever.
Yeah, well, the thing is, every time that Maul has come back in the expanded universe, people, he's back because he's badass. You can't take this guy. He's badass. And it's like, that wasn't, I don't think that was, look, not to undercut any of those stories, like the, what was it, the Infinities, or what was the line?
Yeah, right, the Infinities, right, yeah.
In the desert, and attacks Obi-Wan.
Right, and he gets popped by Uncle Owen.
One of the cooler things that Obi-Wan, bursts out of the sand, which is something you've never really seen to do. I mean, so there are great ideas there.
Yeah.
But they only really had the movie to work off of, right? And the movie has him, at last we reveal ourselves to the Jedi, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. And Ray Park's amazing performance. And by the way, Peter Serafinowicz really created a brilliant starting point for that character vocally. But if you cut the guy in half, I'm sorry, it's just a terrible story if he comes back saying, "Hey, here I am,"
Right.
I'm back, and I've been waiting for 12 years. That's a terrible story. That's actually bad storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
The story of Star Wars is always has these examples of the dark side of the Force taking more than it gives you, and that the consequences for being a disciple of the dark side are always extraordinarily grim. And so, yeah, so this idea of like, first of all, we have to explain his absence. And secondly, we have to, the spider thing, the thing I thought was so beautiful about it was it's like, great, this is actually the first time in Star Wars, aside from the Emperor's particular stamp on it, this is the first time that we're really staring into the dark side. And there is no force of will that is strong enough to filter that for us. We're staring at the literal truth of the dark side, which is madness and despair and grief and suffering. That's what it is. Because when you're that selfish, when you're that self-absorbed, this is the ultimate consequence. You become obsessed, and in his case, he's become obsessed with himself, and he's been consumed with what he's afraid of. And one of the things that the Sith are always afraid of is dying. Why doesn't Vader do something? He's living this terrible life. So you think he would have made a move on the Emperor, and he tries these different things, but why doesn't he just be a little bit more bold about it? Because at least if he dies, that's some form of release. Well, no. He's afraid of that. And he's afraid of the Emperor, and he's afraid of death. And because if you die, then you can't get any more things. You can't receive things. You can't accumulate. And so this all made perfect sense to me. I'm like, this is the consequence for following that. That you cease to live in a real world because you're not really paying attention to the people that are around you, and you're not living in a world where other people's feedback means anything to you. You're living in a world that's completely about yourself, and that is a definition of insanity. To live in a world where you are so single-mindedly about yourself that you're not playing by anyone else's rules, or rules that are even healthy for yourself. I know I'm getting super.
No, that's what we do. We should have had Sam on the round table. We could have used you earlier.
But this is these were when I read the script, I was just like, this is absolutely right. This is the only way you can bring back the character. And also because the fans have such expectations, you do need to wipe those expectations clean with doing something that they don't expect, and then only then have they earned getting the character back that they expected, and having him go off and fight a cool lightsaber fight. But you do have to earn that, Mm-hmm. And furthermore, the Darth Maul that we see in the second episode, Revenge, he isn't quite on his game just yet. In fact, it'll be a little bit before we see him back on his game, but when he gets on his game, that's when he's at his absolute most dangerous. And that's when it gets really exciting, because this is the thing that people haven't, things that people have overlooked about this character is that he would have to be smart. He'd have to be near genius level. Because, look, the Sith, there's only two, right? You get an apprentice. And, there's theories that, Anakin was always the target even before he was born and blah, blah, blah. But the Sith, my personal belief is that they're more competitive than that. That Palpatine would be like, I'm gonna do my best with this apprentice. And yes, I got this other thing waiting in the wings if this doesn't work out. And in fact, I'll have them fight each other. If to prove to me who's the better apprentice. I mean, this is part of the recruitment process,
right?
And so one can, one has to believe that Palpatine trained this guy as well as he could have and got the best guy he could. So it couldn't be just, he's a really good fighter, so he's going to be my apprentice. No, he would have to be brilliantly intelligent. He would have to have learned something from his master in terms of his political acumen and his ability to think strategically and tactically, and he'd have to be he'd have to have been someone who could have worked out in the Clone Wars very well for Palpatine. I mean, the way that I looked at it is that he was supposed to be a cross between General Grievous and Count Dooku. That perhaps you would have assembled. There would have been a puppet guy involved, in charge of the Separatists, but Darth Maul really would have been running the show. And,
there's the great line where he says, the Clone Wars began without me.
Yeah.
Where he feels like he did miss it.
What I say about what his function would have been, that is more my theory, but it is a theory based on what we see him do the next few times that we see him in the show. Because he starts putting together some plans, and you're kind of like, well, you seem like you've been trained for this. You seem like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not at first, but because he's not perfect and he makes some mistakes, but eventually you learn that this guy is effective. And again, I thought that made perfect sense. It doesn't make sense that Darth Maul would have just been this silent assassin. And while that's cool, kind of like Boba Fett, it doesn't make sense for a Sith apprentice at all. Because this guy would have to at least have the ability. You couldn't be a Sith apprentice unless your master was like, this guy has the potential to become more powerful than me and eventually kill me, so that the Sith continue to remain strong. I mean, hell, Palpatine says that about Vader. He says that to Yoda, that Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us. That's what he really wants. He wants someone who will at some point surpass him and forcibly take his power from him, to take the influence, to eventually take over the Empire and make sure the Sith are strong. So you don't hire an apprentice who's stupid,
Right.
or just not that sharp. I mean, having said that, Darth Maul doesn't have to say a lot to get what he wants. He is at times in our stories a man of very few words, but what's wonderful about him is that you can see him thinking and plotting and planning and scanning the room and figuring out who are we talking to and how do we maneuver this to our advantage, especially when he has Savage backing him up. Anyway, I've just talked there for a very long period of time.
No, it's all right. No, it's all right.
Really, I really think you need to think a little bit more about this character and try to understand his motivations a little bit better. No, really, this is really great stuff here. It's fantastic insight to a character who's remained mostly a mystery, mostly an enigma for years and years. And you're really bringing something of your own spin to the table. Have you heard from the original voice, Peter Serafinowicz? Has he watched either of the episodes that you're aware of?
No, I haven't. I hope that he sees it at some point and approves of what I've done. But I mean, on the other hand, I don't know if that's, I don't know how he would feel about that. I've talked to his buddy Simon Pegg though, who really liked him. He really liked the episodes. He said some very kind things. Which, again, I don't know if that's the same thing as getting Serafinowicz's buy-in, but
well, I mean, if Simon Pegg is complimenting anything going on in the prequel era, then you scored a home run. So good on you there.
Yeah,
certainly,
he was very kind.
That's great.
Simon's a very intelligent, opinionated guy, especially when it comes to Star Wars. So he obviously, he didn't like everything in the episodes, but overall, he said the key thing about these episodes is it certainly makes me want to see more. So I thought that was
there you go. You've done your job, right?
Yeah, well, that's the point, right?
Right.
If it's entertaining and it gives someone something to think about, then sure, yeah, then tune in next week, right? That's the business, right?
Right. Sam, you kept talking about, the nature of the Sith and the relationship between the master and the apprentice. I mean, a little bit about this, having played a pretty complex character in The Force Unleashed, Vader's secret apprentice. How much of the study that you did in playing that character were you able to kind of bring to Darth Maul? Do you see a cohesive Sith philosophy from project to project that you're working on with Star Wars?
Oh, it's funny that you should say that, because when we were doing Force Unleashed, when you're developing a character, you're trying to figure out what are the different sides of this character, because you want to make a three-dimensional guy, a guy who, when he talks to his friends, talks in a certain way, and when he talks to these people, he talks a certain way and has these different opinions about things, and you're trying to break him down into several different levels. By the way, like, little side note, this is completely neither here nor there, but the guy, Michael Ironside was doing an interview for the character in Splinter Cell that he does, right? And it's funny because I'm hearing myself sound like him. He's like, I like to break down different characters. and I like to break them down to at least 4 different levels. And it's Sam in Splinter Cell, his level is fear. And you're just like, what are the other 3? Never mind, you're awesome. Because, let's face it, that guy is kind of nonstop awesome in everything that he does. So I don't care whether he promised us 4 levels and gave us 1 level. I don't care. He's Michael Ironside. He's the coolest guy.
4 levels.
There's a story about on Top Gun, he was walking around the deck of an aircraft carrier, and and he was like in uniform, and he's like, God, I just don't even know how to play a military guy. I don't know what I'm doing. And while he was trying to figure out how the hell to play a military guy, a midshipman ran by and nearly, and then when he saw Michael Ironside in his uniform, he thought Michael Ironside was a ranking officer, so slowed down immediately, and Michael Ironside's like, hey, slow down. and the midshipman just freaked out and just walked very slowly past him, and then he's like, oh, I think I get this. Anyway.
That was it.
Just a little side story about Michael Ironside. But yeah, when it comes to The Apprentice and Force Unleashed, we actually made an effort to say, his training, let's do a little Darth Maul story. This is how maybe Darth Maul would have been trained. This is so let's make him sound a little bit like Darth Maul when he's talking to Darth Vader, What is thy bidding, my master? And that type of stuff. So yeah, there was actually an effort to connect that character to Darth Maul in that way. I mean, there was some similarities there. And so it's funny that here years later I'm getting to put that practice into use.
Sam, the sequel to Force Unleashed was left kind of open-ended. And
Yes,
I was
sir.
wondering if you were ever aware of any plans or discussions to make a Force Unleashed 3.
Yeah, you got to talk to LucasArts about that, sir. That's their domain in terms of when they do projects and how they do projects. That's completely up to them. But the good news is that those two games were very successful, and everyone I certainly got a lot out of them because it's funny. I those affected my career in a big way. I took meetings for series regular, jobs, for television shows, big jobs, and they'd ask me about Force Unleashed. Hell, look, I could tell you, I can't really say which ones because I was actually cast in one or two of these and then couldn't do it, and it would be, frankly, not the nicest thing to say, hey, I was the original so-and-so on this show, I think it's lame.
Sure.
But some of these were really awesome jobs, and these guys were like either fans of Force Unleashed or just wanted to know more about it because everyone was talking about it. And in terms of my personal relationship, to Force Unleashed, I get asked about that every week, whether it's on the street by some fan or someone who played it or by the press. I love the fact that I never would have dreamed that it would have been as helpful to my career as it's been. But it really, I'm tremendously lucky to have gotten that role because that it really seemed to have resonated with a lot of fans.
Oh, absolutely. Is it something that really resonated with me in particular? While I did love your role as Starkiller, the way you voiced the Emperor was, just such a surprise and just so amazing that I thought it was Ian McDiarmid at first.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. I'm better at it now than I was back then. I was just learning it back then. But thank you. I appreciate that. I will tell you this: when I was recording in Montreal, I was because some of the Darth Maul stuff had to be done remotely because I was shooting Being Human at the time, and so we were doing this. I was in a studio with some very experienced guys running the session, and Dave Filoni was remote from the ranch. And during a break, after having worked for about an hour, the people that were running the studio said, hey, could you tell us who this Dave Filoni guy is? And I'm like, oh, well, he's the showrunner of the Clone Wars. And they're like, look, we've run lots of sessions for lots of shows, animated or otherwise, and including movies, had big directors in here. We've never seen sessions run this efficiently. Or we've never heard a guy know exactly what he wants, like this Dave Filoni guy. Like, what's the deal? And, and I remember just feeling proud because I'm like, yeah, the guy's uncommonly talented. He knows what he's doing.
Wow.
So
that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's very cool.
It's my hope because him and George work so well together, and he's really learned how George wants Star Wars made. I got to say, I really hope that George taps him to be the showrunner for the live action series because I think he could do it. In my experience, and by the way, I can be a pain in the ass on a set. I really can. If someone doesn't know their stuff, I take them to task. And I'm not quiet when something needs to be changed or something isn't up to snuff. So I can be hard on people. and again, only ever to make the project better. But I will take people to task. And so, for me to say, hey, this guy could handle this, I truly mean that. Like, I've worked with a lot of incredible people, and Dave Filoni is one of the most talented out there.
It appeared there was quite a bit of chemistry between yourself and Clancy Brown in some of the behind-the-scenes videos we've seen. Just, some general thoughts on Clancy, what he's like in the studio, and what it's like to work with an actor of his caliber.
Well, he's brilliant. This is Clancy Brown. I mean, it was a big deal when I was doing the Mortis recordings, and Clancy came in to get autographs for his kid. That was actually a big deal for me because I'm a big fan of his work. I think he's just a nonstop brilliant actor, and so I remember when because the Mortis trilogy aired, I think right after the Night Sisters trilogy, and I saw Savage Opress, and I I'm going into it. I'm like, oh, I'm playing the son. This is going to be so cool. He's such a cool character, and I'm all cocky. And then I see Savage Opress get introduced, and I'm like, oh, I have to come after this guy? Oh, no. This is such a cool character. Clancy's just, he's so great at this. Why do I have to air after this guy? He's really, really talented and really, really knows his stuff about Star Wars, too. He's a big fan, so he actually has a Rolodex of Star Wars information that he used, but more than anything, I mean, he's got this amazing vocal mechanism, but then just chops that are born of years and years and years of successful work, and I just admire the hell out of the guy. I mean, I got to be honest, when I get around him, I'm a little bit in awe of him because I just think he's extremely talented. So, that's Clancy Brown.
Sam, how long have you been developing this this talent? Working with your voice and creating so much range. And I mean, you're an on-screen actor. I mean, you've done a lot of on-screen work. You're in a hit show on Sci-Fi, Being Human, the American version of the series. When did this? I mean, have you always been kind of a mimic, or when did that start for you?
Well, I've always done voices to make my friends laugh. Everyone thought I was going to be like a comedic actor. They thought I was going to go do like SNL stuff when I was in theater school, because that's all I really did well. I just kind of sucked at everything else. But then oddly, when I started working a few years later, it was just drama. And then eventually got, I think, better at that than, I mean, maybe I didn't suck when I was in theater school. I don't know. But I always thought I was just good at comedy. Mm-hmm. And, so, but I always was, making strange voices. In terms of doing it professionally, I'm still very new to it. So I always feel a little bit off balance, like I don't really know what I'm doing. But, as far as my friends are concerned, I mean, I sit around and talk like this and do a Schwarzenegger impression. It doesn't make them laugh. Let's try it. And it's go, come on, go, do it.
Oh, give me a get to the chopper.
Come on, get to the chopper, go. Yeah.
Wow.
I was at a party and a friend of mine.
Dang.
Aside, and this is a true story. I'm at this party and my friend goes, "Hey Sam, come here," and grabs him by the arm. Sam, I want you to meet Arnold. Arnold, this is Sam. Oh, great, nice to meet you. Hey, Sam does a great impression of you. Great, And I'm like, oh, great. So then I somehow talk my way out of it, but I'm standing in front of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Come on, do it. Come on. I'm here. Kill me. Come on, do it. So look, I've done it for fun. I just haven't done it professionally a lot. So I'm still learning. I still have a great deal to learn.
Wow.
The Palpatine thing. I mean, look, my expertise is in front of the camera. That's where I feel, most centered. That's where I feel like I know what I'm doing. And, I've somehow become a dramatic actor. And
well, I have to tell you that I thought your performance as the son was an absolute masterclass in voice acting. Truly.
Yeah.
I thought it was unbelievable. Your ability to invoke all of those characters and it was that whole scene where you are Darth Maul, you are Dooku, you are Palpatine, I thought was just unbelievable.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That feels great to hear. I mean, that more than anything isn't so much any kind of. Look, when I went to theater school, there was vocal training and there's all kinds of stuff that I am using. But more than anything, honestly, when you're a Star Wars fan for as long as I have and you've become an actor, you think a lot about how those performances are meant to work. So this is all just me trying out my theories, really. Just being like, I think it should, I think Star Wars performances are in terms of the heroes, I think you should talk fast and talk loud. I think that works better because it's more of a 1940s thing. They're shot in master shots, so you need to fill the screen with personality. So kick it out there, and then when it comes to the villains, you can actually slow it down a little bit, but definitely make sure that you pack a lot of information in each sentence. These are all just theories that I've had for many years, which I hope I continue to get to try out on the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah. I think you guys have developed a pretty decent relationship. The possibility remains you'd come back as some other characters too.
Oh, look, I'd love to do it. Anything that Dave wants me to do, I'll do. It's a lot of fun. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. It's one of my favorite things on the planet. So, God, I don't take a better man than me to say no to some of these things.
Right on.
It's for Force Unleashed, it was one of those. It was the first time we were trying out theories about Star Wars acting, and it was, because we were trying to make something that was set closer to the original trilogy. I brought up a lot of points. I'm like, we got to pay attention to 1940s movies, guys. That's where it's coming from. That's the source material. In fact, let's watch Buster Crabbe in the Flash Gordon serials, and he's all, hey, I'm Flash Gordon. You'll be our prisoner. And then he grabs someone by the chode and throws him down. You got to see these things. They're really, he targets the chode. I'm not kidding you here. It's the dirtiest thing you've ever seen. He'll grab someone really by the undercarriage, pick them up and throw them. And they didn't have stunt doubles back then, so he's really hurting people. Flash Gordon's kicking ass. You get the feeling that they're on the set, these days you choreograph a fight scene. Back then they're like, all right, Buster, these 3 creature men come out and they attack you. So I watch it. You want me to kick their ass? Yeah. All right, action. And they're just like, come on. Good work, Buster. You did it. But anyway, talking about those things, it's like these things are the things that informed George Lucas when he created Star Wars. So if you want to get the performances right, I think you need to study these things. And one of the things that I always was like, well, look, the dialogue is old school Saturday morning serial stuff. So, well, what did they do? Again, it's all shot in masters, and it's all about these big performances. Bigger performances work better than smaller performances in Star Wars. Being human. If I were to do like my Star Wars thing and being human, I'd be laughed off the screen. But when it comes to Star Wars, they're never really going in for those close-ups. They're never really punching into your face like that. You actually have to fill the space with a personality and with character traits and a sense of humor and a pace to the dialogue, because if you watch, what it is like George Lucas said in, people always made fun of George Lucas because all he would say to the actors in the original Star Wars movies was, oh, great, do it again, faster, more intense. And that was it, faster, more intense. But then watch Star Wars and you're like, wow, dude, that's actually the perfect direction to take this entire movie, Can't get out that way. Oh, cut off my escape route. Why you? Don't look at me that way. And it's this very quick banter between all the characters. And because of that, the dialogue, the audience never gets ahead of it. It's all very exciting stuff. Anyway, I didn't mean to... Look, I am I'm being extremely long-winded on this stuff, so please cut me off.
Never. You are going to stay on with us till next week. Because you are definitely a Star Wars fan, and there's no doubt about it. Have you had the opportunity to actually meet George and talk about your characters with him?
I met him once during the release of Force Unleashed, and we actually talked about this 1940s pace of the dialogue. We got into a conversation about that. So... yeah, cool. that was, and then he signed my Force Unleashed poster, so that was cool.
I love it. That's cool. And you were just at Skywalker Ranch. We saw a great video on StarWars.com. You were sitting in the archives next to a mannequin of Darth Maul. Was that your first time to visit the ranch in the archives? Did that happen when they had the big Darth Maul screening at ILM?
Well, Lucasfilm is very nice to people that are kind of in the family, and so. I think around Force Unleashed 2, I somehow made the clearance I could just go and stay at the ranch sometimes. And so I'd been on the ranch several times before, but I'd never been in the archives. I mean, that place is it's locked down. It's impossible to get into. So when, Tracy Canobio was gracious enough to say, "Hey, Sam, listen, I have a deal for you." I'm like, "Oh, what's the deal?" "Well, how would you like to stay at the ranch?" I'm like, "I always love to stay at the ranch." She's like, "All right, but in exchange, you're going to have to do an interview for us." I'm like, "Sure, I'd love to." In the archives. I'm like, what? Okay, so you're basically saying to me, "Hey, Sam, we'll give you $100, but only if you allow us to give you $1,000." And so I got to go and check out the archives, and you can tell by my, if you watch that interview, I'm not doing a real good job of hiding my enthusiasm. I mean, it's you don't understand what I was being, because I had just walked in and the cameras were set up, and I didn't have a chance to really acquaint myself with my surroundings. So behind the cameras are Star Destroyers and X-Wings, and the Ark of the Covenant is right behind me, and there's all these thuggy guards and things from Temple of Doom, and this is film history. This is a big deal. This is stuff that people will wonder about, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and I got to be near it, So for me, that wasn't the ideal time to conduct an interview, because I couldn't think straight. I was just surrounded with film lore. So,
did you get a chance to look around more after the interview?
Oh yes,
okay.
Yes. They showed me a lot of stuff. The archivists actually stayed after hours and showed me a lot of stuff, and that was just, you have no idea what it's like to be that close to it, and to be so close that you could touch it, but I didn't have the heart to touch anything. First of all, you're not supposed to, and secondly, right. I wouldn't want to. It's cooler to not touch it, but I got right up into it. The 6-foot Star Destroyer model. The detail on that thing is just tremendous, and to be there and look at this and say, wow, this is what they shot to create that illusion that sparked my imagination when I was just a kid. It's really something else.
What was your first Star Wars memory as a kid, Sam?
My first Star Wars memory is, it comes between my father coming home and giving me a Stormtrooper action figure, which I knew what it was at the time, so I'd clearly seen Star Wars or was aware of it in some way, but I remember handling it and just thinking it was the coolest thing ever. And then also, he came home one day with a bootleg copy of maybe the last 25 minutes of the movie Star Wars. And it was on VHS, which was brand new at the time. No one, not everyone had VHS at the time. This is when VHS tapes were like $80.
Right. Oh yeah.
And that's in like $1979 or $1980, which is more like $160 now. But he came home with the last 25 minutes of Star Wars on tape with the promise that in the next few weeks he'd be able to get the whole movie on a bootleg tape, which is literally someone smuggling big, heavy video camera equipment into a theater and videotaping it. So I would watch that 25 minutes over and over again, watching this lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and then, some of the end battle. And then when I finally got the whole movie, that was just a miracle, because it's like we had Star Wars in our house. And then I guess the next big momentous memory that I have is going to see Return of the Jedi in the theater. And I was still
What theater?
I was this is interesting. It was a theater called Old Orchard.
Sure, in Skokie.
Yes, with those strange statues on the wall.
Yeah,
and it was there that I saw Return of the Jedi for the first time, being totally familiar with the characters, the situations, and being just old enough to actually make some pretty adult conclusions about what was happening in that film. When the Rebel cruisers started getting blown up, I was horribly demoralized, because even at maybe I was 5 or 6 years old or something like that. I was devastated, because I'm like, there are thousands of good guys aboard those ships and they're all dying, So I was like, we're losing. This is bad. I remember being creeped out as hell when Obi-Wan was saying, "Here's a ball machine now, the man, twisted and evil." And I was just like, oh no. And it really put into question Luke's little crusade. I was like, this is not, Obi-Wan's saying it's not a good idea to try to save this guy. He's saying that he's going to hurt you if you do. This is not good, and just really understood what the Emperor represented. And for me, the Ewoks were a welcome relief from all that darkness,
Oh, absolutely.
As
You're
a
right.
kid,
Yes.
I needed that.
Yes.
I really needed the release route, because without the Ewoks, it's a pretty dark film. You have Luke showing up on the Death Star saying, "Hey, guess what? We all die. We're all gonna die, including me." You know, I mean, like, what?
Yeah.
You know, Luke choking out pig guards and all the stuff that's happening, including, you know, again, Obi-Wan Kenobi. People don't really give Obi-Wan credit for this move, but Obi-Wan and Luke have a conversation that goes something like this. Luke goes, "Hey, I can't do this. I'm not cool with this plan." And Obi-Wan's like, "Well, kill him though." And he's like, "But what if we saved him? Can we bring him back?" And Obi-Wan's like, "No, we can't. Kill him. It's a bad idea. This guy's like rotten to the core. You have to take him out." He's saying it politely, but he's saying, "Kill him. Your plan is bad." Me and Yoda are saying, "Kill him." And the most wonderful thing about the story of Luke Skywalker is that he gets to a point where he's enough of a man to reject what everyone is telling him, the good guys and the bad guys. And he goes, "No, it feels right to save this guy. That's what I'm going to do. Regardless of the Emperor says I should do this, Yoda and Obi-Wan say I should do this, I'm going to do something that none of them have thought of. I'm going to save him."
The third way, yes, he comes up with it. That's very cool. It's something that people haven't brought up here before.
That he couldn't have done in the second or the first movie, but he's ready to do it in the third.
Yeah, and you know, Sam, you and I, we share. We were born the same year, so I was the same age as you were exactly when we saw Return of the Jedi in the theater, and it was probably one of the most profound experiences of my childhood, no doubt.
Seriously. Yeah.
And it's interesting how, as young as we were, we, like you say, we went into it knowing all the characters, knowing the situations, knowing what was at stake.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever see anything quite like it, but
well, you know what's funny is there's an actor named Dave Gentoli, and he'd never seen any Star Wars movies. He's the star of the show Grimm.
Huh.
And he'd never seen any Star Wars movies. So me and my buddy Ken Mitchell, we're like, all right, well, it's time. We had a specified amount of time. Like, we only had a few days because I had to go off and shoot Being Human, and different people were doing different jobs. So we decided, we're like, well, okay, well, we have to, if we have a limited amount of time, we show them the original Star Wars trilogy, obviously, because, you know, for my money, no movie sets up Star Wars better than Star Wars. You know, no movie actually hands you a lightsaber and lets you swing it around before you fight someone with it. No movie explains the Force so eloquently as Alec Guinness does. No movie actually takes you from 0 to 60 the way that movie does. So it really does need to be watched first. So then and then also if you go to Empire after that, you get to maintain all the surprise of Yoda and Darth Vader's big spoiler, you know, that whole thing of who Darth Vader really is, which blew Dave Gentoli's mind. He didn't see that coming, you know, which was a miracle for us because, like, who doesn't know this? But he didn't. And so he was shocked. And this is a 31-year-old guy, right?
You had a real Star Wars virgin there.
Absolutely. So then, after that, we're like, you know, we have an opportunity to strike a blow for science here. So we're like, we have an extra day. Let's show him Revenge of the Sith now. So we're like, Dave, you curious about, you know, this whole backstory? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So we put on Revenge of the Sith. And what was awesome about that is that he actually had doubts. He said, well, is Vader lying? I mean, I think he's not, but could it be that someone else becomes this Darth Vader guy? And he goes, what did the Yoda mean by that whole "there is another thing"? What the hell was he talking about? What's going on here? He had all these questions. And so then, you know, as the movie goes on, we would stop the movie every now and then, and Dave would share his thoughts. And he'd go, I don't know, I think maybe Anakin's a good guy. And then he beheads Dooku, and he's like, okay, I don't know, I have a bad feeling about this guy. And
right.
And then by the end of it, he's like, okay, yeah, he's Darth Vader. And it wasn't, you know, you could see that he was kind of bummed out by the fact. And then, but one of the most wonderful reveals was that, you know, as soon as that droid goes, she's carrying twins. Dave, it's like, pause, what, pause, wait, pause. And he's freaking out, and he's like, there is another? And he's looking at me and Ken, and we're like, yeah, I don't know what's happening. And by the way, in the meantime, you have to understand, he's been through all this stuff with the Emperor and all these terrible things, and the bad guys are just kicking ass. So now there's like this ray of hope, and he's like, there's another? What's going on? And then the scene is playing out with the births of the twins. And he's, you know, Luke comes out, and he's like, it's Luke. Is it Leia? Leia, and he just freaks out. He just had this great, just this exclamation like, yes, holy shit. And he's freaking out. And he's trying to wrap his brain about what this means to Star Wars now that he's discovered that Luke Skywalker has a twin sister, and it was Leia. So then we go to Return of the Jedi, and all of the characters are lovingly reintroduced one by one, brought back into the story. And when you see Luke, he's dressed like his father. And, so Dave's like, oh, no. Oh, this isn't good, because he just, Luke has been just in dark times now. And he's choking out the Gamorrean guards, and Dave's like, oh, no, this is what's going to happen here. Because now there's another that could take up the mantle of Jedi Knight, so maybe Luke's going to fail. And then, the scene with Obi-Wan happens, where he goes, the other is his sister. And Dave's watching it. And then he goes, whoa, wait a second. Pause. Is this how you guys found out? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, that's so lame. He's like, no, my way is so much better. He's like, mine was really dramatic. And it was a story point. And this is just some guy telling you. And I'm like, no. We accepted it at the time.
That's right.
And so when Yoda's saying, don't, beware the Emperor, Jin Toli's like, yeah, you'd better look out for that guy, and because he had this whole history with them. And then finally, the big thing at the end was that, Luke is being killed by that lightning. And Dave, the last time he'd seen the lightning was when Anakin screws up. So he's just sitting there going, oh, God, not again. Come on. And he literally was like rooting for the guys, like, come on, snap out of it. Just do something. Come on. So then when Vader makes the move toward the Emperor, it was a huge moment for Dave. And, we kind of converted him into a Star Wars fan. And this is a guy who's 31, so he is having an adult reaction to all these movies.
Yeah.
And he said, he's like, for my money, Return of the Jedi must be watched after Revenge of the Sith. He's like, it's a much better movie if you've seen Revenge of the Sith right before it.
Pretty interesting. There's been a lot of conversation online, especially now that the Blu-ray Complete Saga has been released, as to what is the preferred order in watching these films. And of course, George always wants everyone to watch them 1 through 6. Old school fans want to watch the first trilogy and then the prequels. But we're hearing about all these alternate orders. And oftentimes it's 4, 5, then the prequels, then Return of the Jedi, or a variation.
Right. Yeah, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. That 6 wraps it all up.
So that way you still get the reveal,
Yes.
the I am your father reveal, but and then you can really sink your teeth into the backstory before it all gets resolved.
Well, guys, how did Godfather do it? They introduce you to Don Corleone, they introduce you to the family, and then in the next movie, you've now framed it with a flashback story being framed by what's happening in modern day.
Absolutely,
so you do it the Godfather way. You do, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. In fact, there's a better way to do it. Clone Wars, then 4, 5, then 1, 2, 3, 6. Because if the kids watch Clone Wars first, a young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine before he turned to evil, hunted down and destroyed the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father. That makes kids hate Darth Vader with a passion because Anakin is their hero, because they watched the cartoon.
Right.
And then when they go to 5 and learn that Vader is the father, they're mind blown, devastated, but also hugely intrigued. And then they get to return to that universe that they're aware of, the 1, 2, 3, universe. And they know everything about General Grievous and Dooku and all those characters. And then you get to go to 6 and include it. But, the bottom line is you can't avoid the order with which the movies have been seen, because the Tusken Raiders in, say, Episode 1 are a hilarious joke, but they're a joke. In Episode 4, they're terrifying.
Yeah.
The Jawas in Episode 4 are mysterious. The Jawas in Episode 1 are kind of everywhere. You're like, oh, it's those guys. No, but when you watch Episode 4, you see these little dudes, and you're like, what are these guys? Who are these people? You can't avoid that order. You really can't.
Just to think of the whole generation of kids out there who have only watched the Clone Wars and they only understand Anakin as the do no wrong hero.
Yeah.
They're in for a big shocker. Filoni told us once that they were showing some kids some pictures of Clone Wars characters, and they'd show Padme, and the kid would say, good guy. They would show Captain Rex, and the kid would say, good guy. They'd show Ahsoka, good guy. They'd show Palpatine, and the kid would say, good guy.
Yeah, of course. I actually have made that argument. There's a few things that come up every now and then where it tips Palpatine's hand a little bit, and I keep urging Dave. I'm like, don't do it. The kids haven't made that connection yet. That happens. That's a connection that the kids will make when they see the movies, but not yet. The Clone Wars that's not the Clone Wars job. The Clone Wars job is to portray Palpatine as the good guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they've been doing a pretty good job because we've seen very few references to Palpatine as he's working behind the scenes, plotting his ultimate betrayal of the Republic to overthrow it as the Emperor. We've seen very little of it. And some of us have complained about that, Jason. But when you have, but Sam, when you put it that way, it really does make a lot of sense.
It's not the job of, I don't think it's the job of the Clone Wars show to tip off that story point, especially when you consider that kids are watching this first. They're being acclimated to this world through this awesome animated series. So an animated series that is now, by the way, like rivaling the darkness of the movies.
No doubt.
But an animated series that they are starting with. And and we have to remember that the big reveal for Palpatine is in episode 3. That's when it happens.
Well, that's awesome, Sam, and we're also looking forward to hearing more from you and seeing more from you on the Clone Wars as Darth Maul and who knows who else. And for me, you're the local boy done good, Glenview, Illinois, fantastic, and I'm just very happy for all of your successes, be it Star Wars, Being Human, Crash Tones, you name it.
Oh, thank you very much. And for fans out there, the Maul stuff coming up is so great. I mean, remember that we're thinking of this as a story that continues and has a long arc. So you've only seen the first 40 minutes of this story, and there's a lot more to come that we've already recorded that I just love. I mean, Filoni, all those guys, they're doing such great work, and I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to contribute.
Well, we're lucky to have you. Can't wait to see more of Darth Maul in season 5 and beyond of the Clone Wars. Sam Witwer, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sam.
See ya.
Rebel Force Radio.
Aha! Not even Xena is a match for the limited edition double-edged lightsaber from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
You removed it from its original packaging.
No! It's no longer a collectible!
What a nerd.
Your source for the Force.
All right, let's talk about all the exciting things going on for Rebel Force Radio on Patreon. Yes, Jimmy Mack is the curator of the Rebel Force Radio Patreon experience. Mac, what do they got going on right now?
Well, it's been a busy week for RFR on Patreon. We have not only one, but 2 new editions of RFR Q&A. It's a really interesting one. I think it's our youngest VIP ever making his debut on the Q&A. It's Matt Brewer from Salt Lake City, and he's 25 years old. So what Matt brings to the table is nostalgia for Star Wars. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, he brings this great nostalgia for 2005. Really. And the release of Revenge of the Sith and his 5th birthday. And he walks us through what it was like growing up as a kid in the 2000s. And there's a lot of parallels to our stories as original trilogy fans from the 70s and 80s, or even prequel era fans. He's a prequel era fan. Definitely.
He's a Clone Wars baby.
Yeah. He was way into the Clone Wars as a kid, and it's just great to get his perspective. It's so fresh, so interesting, and just really highlights how powerful Star Wars fandom is throughout generations, and how some generations might approach it a little bit differently than previous generations. There's always these parallels that
sure
that all come together, and we notice consistencies amongst fandoms throughout the generations. So that's a blast. Plus, Scott St. Louis returns to the Q&A and I join him, or he joins me, for a breakdown of THX 1138, George Lucas's first major motion picture, starring the late great Robert Duvall and the late great Donald
great
Pleasance.
timing for that, yeah.
And the return of RFR RPG with Game Master Matt Rashid and Tyler Page and Baby Belushi. Everyone's on board for the RFR RPG and the continuing adventures of podcasters. And all of this can only be found at patreon.com/RebelForceRadio, patreon.com/RebelForceRadio. There you'll find ad-free editions of the weekly RFR, plus early bird releases and full show video. The only place to get it is at patreon.com/RebelForceRadio. Support RFR, your favorite Star Wars podcast, and join a great community of awesome Star Wars fans over at patreon.com/RebelForceRadio.
All right, continuing our look back at Darth Maul through the lens of Rebel Force Radio history. Jim, there was a time not that long ago when you and your incredible sound editing and sound design skills were employed by the folks over at Del Rey to promote various titles, especially leaning heavily on the Clone Wars voice cast that we knew very, very well.
Yeah, it all started when James Arnold Taylor appeared on RFR, and he did a reading from the Kenobi novel written by John Jackson Miller. The people at Del Rey, I think John heard it, or the people at Del Rey heard it, and they really liked how it sounded because I added music and sound effects to it and everything. And they said, hey, would you consider doing that with Clone Wars cast members to promote Del Rey novels? You know, the cast members who their characters would have some sort of association with the characters focused in these Del Rey novels at the time. And I recorded with Catherine Tabor. I recorded with Steve Stanton. But the most fun I had doing it was with Sam Witwer, because as a lot of you guys know, Sam grew up in the Chicago area. Actually, he grew up like 10 minutes away from where I grew up, and went to a high school that was very close to my house and everything. There's a little age difference between me and Sam. It's not like we ran in the same circles or anything. He was on playgrounds when I was hanging out at the drive-in movie theaters with sneaking beers in and all that stuff. So there's big age difference there. But Sam was in town visiting his dad. And so I drove out to the house Sam Witwer grew up in, and we hung out in the basement that Sam Witwer grew up in, and we recorded an excerpt from Maul Lockdown, a book written by Joe Schreiber. I think this is circa, 2014 or something. So we recorded an excerpt in Sam's basement, and he was showing me these Star Wars lightsabers and stuff that he had, and his dad was upstairs watching college football. It was hilarious, It was just like going over to Darth Maul's house in the suburbs,
Yeah.
And we made a great recording. And
Darth Maul's teenage bedroom too.
Yeah, it was nutty. And so I, produced this thing up, and I thought that would be fun to dust off this little nugget here for our Maul March Madness special. And then we can also hear from Dave Filoni, who joined us for a live podcast at Star Wars Celebration 6, commenting on the relationship between Maul and Sidious following Maul's return, and how Maul felt betrayed, and how Darth Sidious tried to imprison him, and things like that. Dave talks about in a little bit of detail in the upcoming highlight we'll hear from Star Wars Celebration 6, recorded live in Orlando. But first, here is the excerpt that we were talking about. The way we approached this, Del Rey and myself, was this was going to be audiobooks on steroids. So here's our excerpt from Maul Lockdown, featuring Sam Witwer.
Darth Maul watched the mess hall clearing out.
After the other inmates left, he remained standing against the wall, observing the guards along the upper perimeter as they went about their patrols. He marked their passage, along with the servo droids that circulated in and out of the hall along with the other inmates. First, nothing seemed to have changed. In the glare of the overhead lights, he watched how the guards and the droids and the inmates all interacted, how they moved among one another, observing their patterns. There were places that they moved and stood and waited, and there were gaps, openings in the gallery that led back to the cells, vacancies where no light fell.
He's been known to visit ventilation conduit 11 AZR.
Smelled like a setup, pure and simple. Yet it might also be the opportunity he was waiting for. Remembering what Coyle had said, Maul felt a sharp wedge of tension pressing low and tight beneath his sternum, a sense of urgency to go forward and assert himself amongst those who would try to cut him down, to betray him, and undermine his mission here. It's what his master would have wanted.
You shall go in as a criminal,
Sidious had said to him,
and live among those animals within the confines of your new identity of mercenary and assassin, relying only on your wit and cunning, not only for the purposes of the mission, but for your very survival. You must assume that every inmate will be looking for an opportunity to stab you in the back at any moment.
Straightening up, Maul took one more look at the mess hall until he'd found what he was looking for. In his mind, an idea had already begun to take shape. It was primitive, but it would work. Off to his left, a crew of inmates that Coyle had identified as the Gravity Massive, perhaps 6 or 7 in total, headed up by their Nogri and his Nelvanian sidekick. They'd continued to loiter near the exit, all staring at him intensely. Maul stepped directly toward them. Drawing nearer, he saw their exposed right arms all beginning to tense and flex together like the individual muscle fibers of a single organism, and none of them took a step back.
Are you Strabo?
Maul asked. The Nogri didn't flinch.
Who's asking?
The Bone Kings. Maul glanced back at the other gang on the opposite side of the mess hall.
They want a meeting.
The inmate's eyes narrowed.
What?
That scum over there. Maul turned and shot a glance across the mess hall to where the Bone Kings were standing on their side, glancing at him more intensely than ever.
They told me to give you this message. What kind of meeting?
I don't know, Maul said, and I don't care. He locked the Nogri in his glare, defying him to look away.
They said it was happening in ventilation conduit 11 AZR.
Turning, he walked away, not bothering to look back, and by the time he got to the exit, an inmate from the Bone King's crew, the bearded human that Coyle had identified as Nailhead, was blocking his way. The man was a monster in human form, scars rippling across his forehead with a sharpened fragment of bone rammed through his nose. There was dried blood in his beard, and his teeth were crooked yellow pegs set at uneven intervals in his mouth.
Hey, puke, he said.
Maul stared at him.
I'm Vasco Nailhead. I run the Bone Kings.
The man allowed a grin to flash across his face.
Suppose you tell me what you were saying to the Gravity Massive about us back there?
Ask them yourself, Maul said. He started to take a step, but the man's hand stopped him.
I'm asking you.
The man leaned in close enough that Maul could smell the blood in his beard. His breath reeked like an open grave. From the cuff of his shirt sleeve, something sharp and yellowish and gray gleamed, just barely visible at throat level, ready to slash.
I'm gonna ask you again, real nice. What did you say? Was it about what we done to them this morning?
They want a meeting.
Is that right?
Nailhead licked his lips.
And just whereabouts did they say his little rendezvous was supposed to take place?
Ventilation conduit 11 AZR. Maul leaned in close. Oh, and they told me one other thing.
What's that?
They said, get ready to bleed.
Rebel Force Radio.
We're talking about the relationship as it stands now between Maul and Sidious. Maul, Sidious, Palpatine. And there was a little bit of a hint dropped at the end of season 4 that we can assume that Darth Maul knows that the Clone Wars was a plan developed by his master and that it's been implemented.
Okay.
Okay, he's following. He's okay. So far, we're right.
I'm like zoning out.
So, staring at the Kitster milk.
It's Sunday morning. No, go ahead. I follow you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, it would be logical to assume that perhaps Darth Maul knows about the double identity. And he could perhaps finger Palpatine. And he's getting in bed with all these undesirables, bounty hunters, mercenaries, the Mandalorians. That's a lot of loose lips out there, and that's valuable information. So at the end of the first episode, Revival, we see Chancellor Palpatine tell his top Jedi generals, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Darth Maul and Savage Opress. They want to hang out with pirates and bounty hunters, they can do that. So are we right to assume that the stakes are very high at this point for Palpatine?
Yeah, well, one of the things I wanted to illustrate, and you know, George, of course, is putting all this in motion, and brilliantly so, I think, is that none of this was easy for Palpatine. It's not like it all happened the way I thought it was going to happen. You know, I mean, it's like, no, it was difficult. It was a challenge. You can't just outsmart thousands of Jedi Knights easily. So there is a lot at stake. Maul surviving is not something that Palpatine necessarily had in his plans at all.
Right.
So this is like what he would call a loose end. And Maul isn't sure how he fits into the galaxy right now. You know, he is well trained, but he obviously isn't supposed to be around. So he knows when he senses the galaxy around him. It's like he's dropped from salt water into fresh water. Something is different about the whole universe right now. And Savage is like, well, the Clone Wars are happening. And, I mean, he wouldn't know from Clone Wars, but he knows that, that's the conflict. That's the conflict that my master had spoken about. I didn't know it would necessarily take this form.
I see.
But this is the conflict. He did not know about the clones. He wasn't in on that.
Right.
Other people were in on that. And Palpatine manipulates and he works everybody for his own purpose. So, Maul knows certain things. He doesn't know other things. It's kind of like you guys.
Well, true.
You know some things, you don't know other things, so...
I guess that can be said about all of us, really.
Yeah, so that's why he's a compelling character now, and Sam Witwer brings him to life brilliantly, and I pointed this out to the crew. I said, what's interesting about Maul for us, he's like a movie giant of a character.
Mm-hmm.
And now nobody knows what happens to him.
Right.
You don't know. We could kill him 3 episodes in.
That's right.
We could kill him much later on. We could leave him alive.
Mm-hmm.
For all we know, by New Hope, he's hanging out with Kitster and Mos Espa. I mean, we just don't know. Maybe he lost his legs yet
That's
again.
the next animated series, I think, The Adventures of.
Kitster's like, how's it working out for you? He's like, not too good. I'm on my 4th pair of legs. And Kitster's like, really? I've had the same ones the whole time. He's like, boom. And Kitster's like, ow.
Hey, speaking of legs, by the trailer, it looked like Maul's had another upgrade in the leg department.
Yeah. Leg upgrade.
Right.
You got a leg up.
They look right. They look more biological.
Not bad.
They look like they might be more biological. What do you think?
Yeah, the logic behind that was that they have enough technology to engineer Vader human legs. And the legs Mother Talzin gave him really fit because there's a certain witchcraft kind of feeling to those. They feel very, arcane and bizarre and like, oh, that really fit. So we wanted to give a nod to other creatives in the comic book that came before. So we went with that for a little bit. But then the problem with those legs, ultimately for us creatively, is that it is Maul, but it seems a lot less like Maul in other ways because he can't do all the fantastic martial arts that he used to do.
Yeah.
They're completely different. So we got rid of him. And we got him a new set of legs and new people, that got a hold of him and said, well, he's obviously human. We're giving him human legs.
Now, how many action figures is that going to be? We've got
With variations.
Spider Maul. Yeah,
Spider-Man.
We got Spider Maul.
Spider Maul. You've got probably Resurrection Maul made out of clear plastic that can glow.
Ooh, that's cool.
You've got probably Raptor Leg Maul.
Right, which is over there. Did you see that in the case?
No,
Raptor
I
Leg
saw
Maul?
Spider Leg Maul. I never saw Raptor Leg Maul.
Raptor Leg Maul, Hasbro. Spider Leg Maul is
I did see
amazing.
that.
Oh, you
I
did?
see
Okay,
that.
right.
We got Raptor Leg Maul. Then we've got probably Battle Damage Raptor Leg Maul, right?
Oh, yeah, because the one down from the knee, right?
Then we've got, which we maybe Pirate Escape Maul, you might call him that.
I like that.
You could have a 2-pack, Armless Savage with Broken Leg Maul. They got a 2-pack out of that. Then you get New Leg Maul with new legs. And then just for the fun of it, they would probably throw in their Maul with like soft goods cloak. Something like that. Even though he's never worn one, you might as well do it.
That's right.
While you can. So
yeah.
And then they're like an Infinities crossover Maul with Ben Quadraneros because he can't get rid of the thing. So they'll like take a popular character. You ever see that? And they'll package it with like some sucker of a character.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, so now your kid has a Quadraneros. Listen to this. And listen to this. This is your fault.
Wait a minute.
I come home from work, tired. I have a long commute. Get up from work. I go into my bathroom. I open up a medicine cabinet to get something. There's a Quadraneros in my medicine cabinet looking at me.
Yes. Thank you, Anne.
And I'm like, why is there a Quadraneros in my bathroom? And Anne's like, he was lonely. I'm like, he was lonely. So.
Oh, man.
Anyways.
When Quadraneros gets lonely, he goes looking for Filoni.
So we got him on a poster in
that's the
Anakin's
symbol,
bed.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, 4 fingers.
that
Never
right?
forget.
Never forget.
Always remember.
That's scary.
Rebel Force Radio.
This is Sam Witwer, and you're listening to Rebel Force Radio with Jason and Jimmy Mack, your source for the Force.
I have been waiting for you.
Of course, no look back at the legacy of Darth Maul through the lens of RFR or anybody can be complete without really paying some respect to the OG. And I'm talking about Ray Park, the man who really gave life to the character. Not that Peter Serafinowicz guy. Who's that? He had a couple of lines. We're talking about the physicality of Darth Maul, what made him such a almost immediately iconic character in the history of Star Wars. I think, Jim, had he only been seen in the trailer of The Phantom Menace, he would have become an icon because it was so unique and original, but felt like Star Wars from the very beginning.
Boy, that's so true. And I'll never forget the first time I saw Darth Maul in that trailer. It was the first trailer for The Phantom Menace. And I'm one of the guys who stood in line for the Water Boy, but just watched the trailer.
Hey, I had to stand in line for Meet Joe Black, okay?
Meet Joe Black was one of the films playing.
And so we would just...
it was one night. They put the trailer at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. And so there would be just a cluster of these Star Wars nerds at the theater, and we would just be moving our way down the hallway, going from theater to theater to catch the movies that had the Phantom Menace trailer tacked on either the beginning or the end. So you'd look and you'd be like, oh, Meet Joe Black is going to end in about 10 minutes. So you'd watch the end of Meet Joe Black, and then you'd sit through the credits.
Yeah.
And then the trailer would show. And then you get up and go across the hallway and catch the last 15 minutes of Waterboy. Or if you were lucky, you were catching the beginning of the screening, so you would sit through some coming attractions to finally get to the trailer that you were dying to see. Meanwhile, your computer is at home with the AOL dial-up and just like grinding to try to download, spending hours downloading this video file from Star Wars, the all-new StarWars.com, which was maybe months old at the time. And, people waiting 3 days to download the trailer.
Oh, man, I was one doing that, and I had even what they were calling or considering broadband at the time. and it still took me forever to download that trailer. I fell asleep on the couch waiting for it to download, and then when it finally did, it was like about the size of a postage stamp. Yeah, and it was all pixelated, and it was terrible. But, that was the excitement of that time.
Luckily, I had the VHS set the program and record Entertainment Tonight, and they showed it. So I think they had some watermarks on it and some weird animated flourishes. But when those blast doors open and you see Darth Maul, he ignites that double-bladed lightsaber. It was just... your jaw hit the floor, and I got goosebumps even thinking about it. So let's hear from the OG Darth Maul himself, Ray Park, as he discussed the character with RFR back in 2012. Nice.
Darth Beatbox.
Beatboxing with Darth number 2 of the day.
Sith. This show is like art imitating life, because we have... currently on the Clone Wars TV series, we've got the reunion coming up here between Darth Maul and Darth Sidious, his former master. And here in Dallas, we've got you and Ian McDiarmid in the same place. Have you had a chance to talk to Ian at all since you've been here?
Yeah. I spoke to Ian this morning as soon as we got in, and this was a last-minute sort of booking for me to come down, and it's been about a year and a half since I've been out to any conventions. I've been at Star Wars weekends, of course, which I always have a great time. And I saw the lineup of guests, and I had to come and say hi to Ian and say hi to Casper Van Dien. And I wanted to go and see Stanley. I haven't had a chance. And there's a couple other actors that I've met. And so, it's been nice to catch up with him. I have so much respect for Ian because not only is he a great guy, phenomenal actor, and to me, he's like, I learned so much from people who are really good at what they do. And the first shot of the Phantom Menace was with Ian and myself, and I didn't know what I was really doing. I knew what I was doing, and what up,
right?
But I had never been an actor before, and I always wanted to do it. And I feel like it's something I could do and fake it, and make it and try and do what I can. And we were walking, doing the whole Tatooine is sparsely populated,
right?
And I went up to Ian after George said cut, and I said, so is George going to come over and give me notes or say something, tell me I was bad? And I automatically thought I was bad. And Ian just turned to me and goes, well, Ray, if George doesn't come over, then don't change it, just carry on and take it as a compliment. Everything's good, and and just take it as that everything's okay. So I learned from then on is that if George does come over and give you notes, it's something to change up things or to try something different, and it gave me confidence, and Ian made me feel really at ease.
Right.
Because it was the first shot of the whole movie. And
no pressure.
No pressure, and it was the two of us. So it was good. It was one of those days where I think back to it, did I really do that? Was that something we did?
Wow.
Yeah, but we did.
Did they give you any information about the backstory of Darth Maul? Did they tell you anything about this particular character?
I asked George about it, and trying to ask all the actor-type questions. What is my method? What is my intentions?
Because that's what you do, right?
Yeah. When you don't know what you're doing. And I just said, George, where does Darth Maul come from? Because the first image of Darth Maul was different to how I was, because he looked like he had a barbed wire around his head. So I was concerned about how I'm going to do these moves and how I'm going to move in this big sort of high-piece neck. I think Ian McCabe, he drew the first picture, and I never saw myself as Darth Maul, but he just said, look, I said, where does he come from? And he goes, look, wherever you want him to be, Darth Maul can be whoever you want him to be and wherever you think he is. And so it gave me a boost as well. And George, I've had such the best opportunity and support from George Lucas and Lucasfilm, and to have put so much faith on a 21-year-old to play the villain or one of the villains. It's a big deal to me, and I was just enjoying the ride, Right. I didn't actually think I'd get to play the part at all when I got called in.
You thought you were going to just be doing stunts, right?
I just thought I'd be called in again, because my first job prior to that was Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and it was stunts. And so when I was called in by a stunt coordinator, Nick Gillard, it was like, okay, I'm going to do stunts. It was like, okay, they're looking for someone to play Darth Maul. Here's the images. Inside it was like, I want to do this, why can't it be me, But in my head, I felt that, or thought, that's never going to be me. I'm going to end up just being part of the stunt crew, maybe come back here and there, and then I got to audition. So,
Ray, I've always wondered, what's the dynamic like between a stunt coordinator like Nick Gillard and a director of a film like George Lucas? So you're doing an intense action scene. Is Nick, does he have the ability to say, you know what, that didn't work, or is it up to George, up to the director?
I always say that the director's the master. He's the captain of the ship. But on Phantom Menace, Nick Gillard was like my master. I took him as I was his student. I was a Padawan, and I would. And also I was very shy and nervous. I was brought up never to speak out of tone, never to overspeak someone, never to sort of cross the line. So I knew Nick brought me in on the job. Nick and George and Rick McCallum had like seen, we want you. But I worked with Nick Gillard most of the time. So with us rehearsing, coming up with different things, and a lot of the time we would come up with these technical fights, and then I would be asking like the stunt guys just to attack me because Nick wanted new fights. He wanted a different style. So I felt like whatever you came at me and I moved in a natural way would be the most natural way of me defending that attack. And so I always approached Nick, what do you think? And he always approved everything. And then George would have to approve. He had the overall say. If George liked it, then it was done. If he didn't, then we had to change it.
Is that like the stunt equivalent of improv? Where you said you had those guys coming in, and so you were working out new ideas just by, was that improvisation?
Yeah, we would do it through rehearsal. It was a rehearsal period. Like it would be, okay, what about this? This is the parameters of, because I had never fenced before. I do Chinese martial arts, and then I played a lot of fighting games. So I was a big fan of Soul Edge, Soul Calibur, and Andreas Petridis. He was the assistant stunt coordinator, so we were like, Soul Edge. So we were reenacting a lot of the moves from the game. So on our downtime, we would play, and we were playing the game on the PlayStation. Might have been the PlayStation 1, and so we would play it, and then the next day we'd come into set and we'd rehearse, and we'd go, hey, what about Cervantes? What about da-da-da, does this move? And what about this move? Because they'd do the finishing off move. So we both would reenact those moves, and then we'd play with it in the fight, because it'd be like a warm-up.
Right.
We'd be playing like breakdancing first, before we get to some hard stuff. And so that's what we would do. And Andreas was a breakdancer as well, so we had a lot of things in common.
How long did that lab period kind of last, where you were coming up with the ideas before you actually went on the shoot?
A good 6 weeks. No, it was like 2 months or so. It felt like forever, to be honest with you. It got to the point that we was just sitting down in a rehearsal area at Leavesden Studios, and Nick Gillard would come in, give the morning speech. My boys off to work, do. Master says, master do. And then he would leave, and Andreas and I would just sit there bashing our lightsabers together and wait for him to leave, because we knew how long it would take him to get back up to his office. But Nick was that good that he knew that he could tell by we weren't doing it. We were just sitting there going tap. We were so bored because what happened was the fights got locked. We weren't allowed to change them. So after 2 months, we had locked. George said, yes, I approved these. Liam knows this. Ewan knows that. They're locked. But then our ideas only got better. We were coming up with all these different ideas, and we weren't allowed to change it because it was approved by the master.
Nick Gillard has been going out to conventions teaching people lightsaber training.
Oh, cool.
Have you ever considered doing anything similar to that?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot of times, doing seminars and workshops, and I have different ideas, but now like with G.I. Joe and other things I've done, it goes beyond Star Wars now as well. Right. Like, to me, it's more like little superheroes, teaching kids to believe in themselves and believe in their ability to do what they do. Using Star Wars at first is like lightsabers, and but then bringing in the other elements of myself, of acrobatics and jumping and commando, beating Peter Pan and teaching kids to do stuff in a different way, be expressive in their moves,
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about it on the plane journey over, is that, I can teach, I can do this, I can do that, but I don't want to be the teacher or the master, and I don't want to be considered a master, is where you come in, I teach you how to block a punch, I teach you how to do this. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like I'm the sort of person that will teach you how to express yourself even more so through the moves that I show you. And I think that comes from Wushu.
Well, I think it came through in your characterization of Darth Maul very much. There was a lot of expression going in with all those moves you did and the lightsaber flourishes that you would do and the spin moves and everything. You brought a new dimension to Star Wars combat with just your simple knowledge of the martial arts.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that was a real benefit to the character of Darth Maul, where you brought in a whole new edge to him. And Darth Maul currently is seeing this resurgence in popularity with his return to the Clone Wars. We find out that Darth Maul survived being cut in half on Naboo.
Cool.
So have you been following that? What do you think of that?
Yeah, we don't have TV anymore at home, so I stopped letting my kids watch TV.
You did? How'd that go over?
Well, we have Netflix and Vudu and Hulu and stuff, but I just found that we're a physical family. We either read or we do things through play. Like I'll dress up as Charlie Chaplin, or I'll do things. I want my kids to sit basically it's acting class for me.
Right.
They're my audience, But with I try to get my kids into Clone Wars. They weren't into it at first, but they were young. But we've been doing Disney weekends, Star Wars Disney weekends every year so far. And my kids are so into Star Wars now that my son said to me, "Daddy, I want to be you for Halloween." I said, "Yeah? Who do you want to be?" He goes, "I want to be Darth Maul." So he's got Darth Maul up in his wall. I found the transfer sticker. So I said, "You know what? I'm going to put Daddy up on the ceiling. So when you're sleeping, I'm looking down all the time."
That's excellent.
So he's
That's so cool.
He's got Spider-Man, and I've got him into Spider-Man and Batman and Snake Eyes. But the other day he was I could see he was proud because I don't talk about Darth Maul a lot because he goes, "Daddy, why are you always a bad guy? Why did you have to be a bad guy, Daddy?" And then I have to explain to him. So he's now really getting into it. And my daughter and my son had the best time at Disney weekends this year. And now they're totally into Star Wars.
How old are they?
5 and 7.
What are their names?
Sienna and Rocco.
Wow. Well, you're a great dad. Did you take them to see The Phantom Menace when it came out in 3D?
Yeah. Lucasfilm invited us, and we went to see it. Actually, I had a lot of invites, but I was on G.I. Joe 2 at the time.
Oh, I see.
So we got to see it in L.A. at Fox Studios. And it was nice to be sitting there. And the funny thing is that when I came on the screen, my son went, "Daddy, that's you." You know how 5-year-olds can't whisper?
I have a 4-year-old girl, so I know. She's got a set of lungs on
so
her.
I went like this. But I knew there was a bunch of executive producers and friends and director friends behind me, and they were like, "Oh,
man.
you know what I mean?"
That's awesome.
Because we got in there late, so I didn't know who was sitting there,
Well, I hope you get a chance to catch up with the Clone Wars because what they've done with Darth Maul has been pretty exciting. And I know some of the fan base is a little split on it, but they brought in his brother, Savage Opress. I'm sure you've heard that much. Yeah. So I hope you get a chance to catch up with the episodes because it's a different dimension than the Darth Maul we saw in the films, I think. It's much more character.
Yeah, and Sam, who plays the voice,
Sam Witwer, yes.
He's a good actor. He's a really good actor, and I watched when it was coming out, and I was in New Orleans, and I was online, I was checking stuff. I went in to check in, on going to Lucasfilm because they had on StarWars.com. There was something there. So I was checking it out, and it is different, but it's a great extension to the character. And I think it's there's been so much. Of course, I want to be the character for the rest of my life.
For sure,
do everything possible. But Sam is a phenomenal actor, and he's great with voice, and I think he's a good fit for the character. And we've met a bunch of times, and I think he's awesome. So I think it's great that's. It means if they ever do a TV show, please, Mr. Lucas.
Yes,
I would like to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think there's anyone else they could bring in because
there's plenty of people.
Well, yeah, but you bring in the physical like no one else could. That's totally you. And
Thank you.
I think that there's potential if Darth Maul does survive the Clone Wars. Say there's more Star Wars movies in the future, perhaps Episode 7, 8, and 9, maybe they bring Darth Maul for that.
Yeah.
And then you can bring back the character as only you can do it. And speaking of Star Wars and specifically the 501st, we have some people from the 501st here who wanted to do a little presentation for you.
Oh, really?
If that's cool.
Oh, cool.
They're coming on in here right now.
Thank you.
We have representatives from the 501st, and we have a Sith cheerleader.
Wow.
What's your name?
Nicole.
Nicole, you're a Sith cheerleader?
I am.
Awesome. And you have a little cheer you're going to do for Ray Park?
I do, and we're We're so excited. I have a helper who's going to spell it out for me.
Oh, spell it out. Okay.
Are you ready? Give me an S. Give me an H. Give me an I. Give me a T. What does that spell?
Oh, what?
I think she misspelled Sith.
Yeah.
You're a bad girl. That's right. She's a Sith chick.
So your job was to spell it out?
It was.
And there was some misspelling going on there, wasn't there?
Is that why you love
The blonde messed it up, as always.
Well, hey, listen, we love to see chicks in Stormtrooper gear, so you can say anything you want, spell it any way you want. You're still cool with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the 501st. I don't know if that's exactly what we were expecting, but that was interesting nonetheless.
You never know. Ray, no matter what happens in Star Wars, episode 2, episode 3, the Clone Wars, everybody goes back to that lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. That's always voted the number one fight, the number one action sequence. And oftentimes, fighting is likened to choreography, and it comes down to chemistry between the performers. What was there going on with you and McGregor that made that so effective?
We had that fight was one of my favorites because we called it the 1, 2, 3. And I know it's a very technical name, but very flash.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be number 5, number 6. But it was one of those things, it was the very first beats of moves we did in rehearsal, where it was, early on when I auditioned, I felt that Darth Maul was more of a gentleman, didn't say much, didn't scowl much. In his moves, he was more like, he didn't really pay attention. He looked from his side of his eye. He had that confidence and
like
arrogance.
Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee would, swing up and hit someone without even looking in their direction.
Like those old kung fu movies, you see the master looking away and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of played that with Darth Maul. Maybe that's my wushu background. And so the fight where Ewan comes in, he's pacing, he's like, and I've just killed Qui-Gon, or Darth Maul just killed Qui-Gon Jinn, and I spin in and I'm looking at him ready, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pa pa pa. That was the first beats of the fight we made up. So that was something I always loved doing because I'm moving backwards, but I'm not really paying attention to what's going on. But I know it's there. And Ewan and I just got it down so quickly. We ramped it up, and we were like, "Come on!" So you can see in the movie bouncing, and I'm like, "Come on, let's do this. And it was good because it was cold, it was raining, it was in the summer, but it was damp in the studios. We were tired. It had been a long week. My mum and dad were watching, and my grandma, so I had to do it good. I had to go fast.
Oh, you did it great. And there was an intensity there that we know was not in the script pages. Only you could bring it. You and Ewan working together, that great chemistry.
I had you and Liam to thank as well, because they were great partners to work with.
Oh, fantastic. And of course, Nick Gillard pulling it all together for you guys. It was just a great combination of talent and skill and passion, and it came through big time on the screen.
And you know what? Thank you. I worked with this stunt team, and I really like working stunt team because I'm familiar with like stunts and fights. But then it got to when I worked with the actors, it became a different level where I was working with the actors who were playing the characters. So they're portraying their characters through the fight. So it wasn't just doing moves; it was actually telling a story and feeling something, and that's where it came off in the fight as well. It wasn't I was just trying to go at it and do chops, really.
And it's never been topped.
No,
as far as Star Wars fans are concerned, it's never been topped.
That's the best. My personal opinion, that's my favorite.
Because I wasn't there.
All right, well,
Ray, thanks so much.
Let's go spar. Let's go spar right now.
Yeah, spar.
Let's go. Let's go.
Well, he actually took the training from Nick Gillard, so he's dangerous now.
Like the Chinese chopsticks. Yeah.
What's that?
Who is spar with chopsticks, lightsabers, or any?
Right. In fact, there are lightsaber chopsticks.
We can spar with these microphones if you wish.
I think we have been. Ray, you're the best, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ray Park.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us here at Rebel Force Radio for another week. And I just want to say, we don't say it enough around here, thank you to Jimmy Mack for curating this very special episode. You are the official Rebel Force Radio curator, historian, and thank you so much for giving us this look back at Darth Maul through the very unique lens of our adventures here at Rebel Force Radio. So that was a lot of fun to go back and listen to. And hope you had some fun putting it together.
I did, actually, and it's kind of a privilege to be able to be in the position we've been in for almost 20 years now. Being able to be chroniclers of the history of Star Wars through just mere conversation and hearing from Star Wars legends like Dave Filoni, Sam Witwer, and Ray Park over the course of the last couple hours has really been cool, considering their contributions to Star Wars history and the upcoming Maul Shadow Lord show. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the after shows, and I'm looking forward to curating more great Star Wars history as we look forward to Maul Shadow Lord dropping in a couple of weeks.
It's going to be so much fun. Also, don't forget the big event in Cleveland, May 23rd, the Mando and Grogu After Show Live. We're going to have a lot more details coming up here very shortly about the after show, which is going to be, I think, just as good, if not better, than the after show itself. So all those details coming very, very shortly here. So check it out. Go to playallsquare.org for tickets, or go to rebelforceradio.com. Yeah, that is your source for everything and all things RFR. But if you do need more Rebel Force Radio in your life, and why wouldn't you? The best place to do it is Patreon. We talked about Patreon earlier in the program. That's where you get weekly full show video, exclusive podcasts you can't get anywhere else, and you get to hang out and socialize and chat with the greatest Star Wars fan community in the world. You won't find any better quality of folks than Rebel Force Radio Patreon. Trust us, we've been around a long time. We know about some of those communities. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can subscribe. You can leave a comment. You can like our videos. We really appreciate that. It all helps the algorithms and helps other people discover Rebel Force Radio. Don't just keep us for yourself. Share the wealth. Share RFR. And please continue to follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, where you can check out what's going on, the latest and greatest with RFR. Keep listening. If your podcatcher of choice allows you to leave a review, we'd love to have those too. We read them all. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
All right, that'll do it for us here this week on RFR. We will see you next time. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Stupid face painters apparently never heard of Darth Maul.